Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Where's Wally podcast. Today, we're going over part two of the Oath Keepers. They had like I said in part one, they had an insider threat. An insider threat collected videos, hidden camera stuff, documents, and all their chats from apps like Signal. All the chats today are from Signal themselves. So, only one source on this, just their single chat. They have a quote unquote Intel chat. Um, I try to have a bunch of fun with this one. So what I noticed is these guys are 100% all over the place. I don't know why, but they cover like a million topics. So let's talk about those topics, right? like, um, start. So yeah, and think about it this way too. Like you'll actually see the pictures. I'm gonna keep. I adjusted the PowerPoint so that my head would work where it's at here in the bottom left. Um, Yeah, the whole string of chats is not a long period of time, let's say. So, I mean, they hit so many crazy topics. And at some point in this chat string is when it goes off the rails. So I'm trying to be comedic with my banner titles and things like that because I thought it would be fun because it's sometimes it's going through the minutia of this stuff can get a little taxing, let's say, and quite frankly, it gets boring, So let me say this before we start. So today's date is February the 27th. Right now, it's noon in Virginia. I'm going to try to do 3 videos today. I'm trying to knock them out. I've had a lot going on with studying and research, prepping for some interviews. That obviously has to come first, but I'm taking a break to get this out there. So one of the reoccurring themes that I see is well. Let me start before that. My opinion is still the same. Like do I like these guys in general? Like I'm still kind of neutral. I don't have a strong feeling to the left or to the right on this one. Still, um, after this one, my opinion is still the same. Just like before, like we're not seeing them use racial terms. They're not calling. They're not using racial slang, right? They're when they don't they haven't engaged in that at all. There's still absolutely no talk about overthrowing the government, either local, state, federal. That doesn't exist yet. Um, they are still in many of these chats talking about basically they don't like these white nationalist groups. Something that I found interesting. I wasn't expecting that at all. So they're not I guess my point is the same. Our perception of this group specifically from let's say the mainstream media is loaded with half truths or cherry picking very small things and exploding those. But their actual internal communications are not a representation of what the news media is saying. So is that me supporting these guys? No, no, not at all. One of the purposes of me starting this channel is like and showing data dumps and this version of intelligence and how I perform it is these internal communications are raw. It's raw intelligence. Okay. So I mean, other than these guys trying to like, oh, well, I did this and, what we would call big dicking each other, right? Well, I'm cooler than you because I did this. I was on SWAT, etc. Outside of that, these guys have no reason to lie to themselves internally. So a lot of the opinion, and they don't really ever get in depth on anything except for a few things in here, but they're all, you know, like Jupiter's aligning with Saturn type shit, which nobody gives a shit about, right? It has nothing to do with kind of the problem at hand. But yeah, so, there's still not the things that we've basically been told from the mainstream media. Still haven't seen it. I don't see a lot of, there's not a lot of indications that they're trying to do anything that they were accused of. Right. And this is their Intel chat. You would imagine that the leadership chat or the Intel chat would be the place where those items are discussed, if not in person. So yeah, there's sure those conversations could have been had and the insider recorded them. I haven't gotten that far yet, but hey, we'll see. So first slide, why kill the substations, right? So this one starts going, they start their discussions on the top. They're aware that they think that there's a possible coup going on in Germany, and like the geopolitical reality is not really at all, um, and this the leader David Coates mentions, white nationalists is now used as a broad term, and that's fair. That's true. Way too broad. So what does that mean? They're trying to bring down obviously, politically, the left would try to bring down the right, and the right would try to bring down the left. Like the left's crazy, the right's a bunch of traditionalists, etc. So they're aware of that. Yeah, trying to be vague on purpose, or feds themselves trying to use false flags. Sure. But then some interesting things, their perception of raw intel, and there's actually kind of some evidence in that in there. I don't know if it's true or malicious or the process, but there are a few slides in here that you're going to want to put some more thought into. So, but yeah, they're talking about Germany, and then it goes straight to Ukraine. Okay, Russia, as expected, new missile strikes from Russia are expected, but now not only on energy infrastructure, of course, right? During the winter time, one of Russia's goals is to freeze the Ukrainian population to death. Okay, that's pretty obvious. Really, the only facility that hasn't been attacked in one way, shape, or form, either cyber or physically, or kinetically, I should say, is that major nuclear facility in Ukraine. I forgot the name of it off the top of my head, but yeah, just saw a theory that the shooting up of the substations could be the cause by climate change eco-terrorist. No proof, but something to look into. Yeah, I don't. If my recollection recalls, that wasn't actually people. It's just kind of like the crazies. I think it was actually white nationalists who did it, but I could look that up later. Then they're also aware of Brittany Griner being released in exchange for who was Victor Boot. Victor Boot's probably the most world-renowned weapons facilitator across Africa and the Middle East. When I was deployed to Africa, I mean, he was still not arrested at that time, and he was a big deal, right? Who's arming Al-Attad al-Islamiyah, who's arming the Janjaweed in South Sudan, and more times than not, it was him or his proxies and people working for him. So more Brittany Griner. Okay. So do you think this stoner learned anything? Probably not. I doubt it. What did she say? I doubt it. Okay. Yeah. So they're calling her a stoner. They just can stuff like this. She's like a brat. It's like, hey, you knew weed's illegal there. Still brought weed across the border, and now you're whining that you got arrested. Right. I don't care what country it is. Like one thing, like when you're in the IC or in the military and you travel, like you are given classes and you are made aware of those local laws and traditions, right? It's literally, and if you're cleared, you have to go through the SSO. There's a whole class process so that you don't make those mistakes. And if you intentionally make those mistakes, that's on you, and there's serious consequences for things like that. I'm not surprised that she was arrested in Russia and then released. It was political. Is Russia really concerned with some vape cartridges that have THC? Not really, but it is illegal in the country, and then they used it politically, right? And Russia was way more successful than we were on this one. Let's see what we got here. So the Bobby, and as a reminder, David Coates, I I think he's the former leader, and Bobby Kinch is the current Utah state leader. I also wanted to add, just like the previous one, other than the people who were very in the news, which, by my understanding of the terms of service, I've redacted. Right, so I've redacted links that aren't super public. All the new people, there are new people who show up in this chat, or maybe they've been there the whole time, but they weren't participating. But everything is redacted. I thought this was interesting. Obviously, a group that in general believes that one of the goals of the government is to basically take the rights away, the constitutional rights away the people, would be aware of things like the State Department approving these rounds. These are depleted uranium rounds. There's two different types that they actually purchased in reality, but they're aware of things like that. Okay, more power. So, so this one's pretty good. Seen a lot of infographics doing stuff similar to this, as well as one directly related to attacking power stations on, I think he meant to say 4chan here, because this isn't, I couldn't find anything for that site. I mean, yeah, then he says under poll, that's their political board. So, and these guys talk about getting this data and like all this stuff, but then it's like, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to go up against 4chan? Like, I mean, that's nutty, but if you are making these tie-ins, it is reasonable to assume the FBI and DOJ know the same. If so, it makes me wonder why there haven't been arrests. It could be they are trying to produce links to other patriot groups so they can so they can use these nutballs to cast a broader net over groups with no ties to any of these false flags. I have an idea, just throwing it out there. So basically what he's saying is like, okay, like I've mentioned, and like they talk about, they really don't want to be associated with the white nationalists right off the bat. That's not something they're interested in. Even some similar, let's say 3%er groups like the American Patriots, in Utah, at least they work together, but they recognize that there are groups of their own, let's call them their own, who don't share the same values. So at least the Utah Oath Keepers, and you can't speak for the entire, the entire group, but they recognize that being associated with these people is bad. The next thing they do is they saw this National Terrorism Advisory from Homeland. But it's about the power station attacks are white nationalists. Yeah, and I think that's true. And straight out over. Yeah, so if you haven't read the Turner Diaries, like I wouldn't take it as a guide, but it really does get into the mindset of, let's say, the white nationalist playbook. If I remember correctly, Timothy McVeigh had a copy when he was arrested. When like Waco happened, everybody was talking about the Turner Diaries and stuff like that, and if you didn't know, a bunch of Timothy McVeigh types and curious folks and white nationalists showed up at Waco, which was pretty interesting. So let's see if we hear anything or discover anything on these threads or sites or specific threats related to Utah. I need to know immediately. Okay, so what that shows is a certain level of leadership and a certain level of, like, they want to know about let's say the strategic things, like the whole country level issues, and they also really would prefer to know about Utah. Right, Utah is first for them because that's their local geospatial area. And basically they're saying, they want to back brief a couple dudes who are in local groups on what's going on. David saying it's also weird. We can't even honestly know the Biden administration, FBI, and DOJ are even interested in stopping these attacks. It's obvious that the destruction of America is high on their agenda from Biden's first day in office almost 23 months ago. So they're convinced that Democrats are trying to destroy America. I mean, that's their opinion, right? From if you're not very left on the spectrum, right? Um, some stuff might appear, but I think I don't know that it's like Biden doing everything, right? Like any presidency, anybody in a senior cabinet position, right? There's a lot of things that go on under behind the scenes, and we don't know all that information. So it's really hard to like say definitively, oh, Biden administration's trying to destroy America. I don't think Biden's trying to destroy America, right? I don't think that's his goal, right? I think they're looking. I think they perceive stuff from the hearts and minds perspective. Um, they're just trying to help people, all the people, and certainly in some instances that's been counterproductive. Right? So they go on to say, duh, duh, duh. Yeah, and then they're talking about, they're talking about Griner getting released, and releasing a major arms dealer nicknamed the Merchant of Death for her is again proof how Biden wants America dead. No, it's a political statement. They had more capital than we did in the public, so they won. They won that one. And then basically they're talking about it being a false flag and QE bono, who benefits from this situation. Okay, so they're I cut some of this stuff out just because it needed to be cut, right? But yeah, this is guy's opinion. I don't know exactly who wrote that, but there's other people in Russia that are in captivity. Their opinion is that they should have also been released in this deal. No, I don't think any American should stay and rot in Russian prison for minor, let's say, exceptionally minor like offenses, right? Uh, Forgot who they're referring to here. Regarding the first strike article I just posted, I believe Putin is saying first strike because he has hypersonic missiles that would hit their target before an attack which would make it a first strike and retaliatory at the same time. Okay. Posting above explanation of first strike. No, that's a uneducated perspective of what a hypersonic missile is. What is hypersonic in the first place, right? Most of the videos that have had analysis of those hypersonic systems, they're not actually hypersonic fast. And the reason for that is if they fire those missiles from inside Ukraine, um, uh, the second they fire one, the counter battery systems are going to pick that up and destroy the system as a whole. So they're firing them from a further distance than they would typically in a perfect combat scenario would like to. So they have to have more fuel, which makes them heavier, which makes them not as fast, etc. Can these systems be taken down by counter battery? Absolutely. Yeah. That's been proven since then. Multiple systems can take these things out. Um, I try to look into this a little more. It's weird. Then they're talking about Iranian pilots complete Su-35S training. Iran doesn't have a lot of allies, but Russia is one of those allies, and so that's Su-35S is a Russian platform. So of course that's where they're going. It's like not even news. We do training with the Brits and the Australians, the Japanese, the Germans. We do joint operations, joint training all over the world with all sorts of people. When they do it, it's like, oh, shocking, right? But it's really, if you're in the know, it's not shocking at all. It's just that's a pretty normal country to country um, uh, process that occurs. Okay, so this one's interesting. One of the dudes mentions keyhole. I'm not going to go into it too much. I know you can, if you want to Google it, you can. Let me see where it's at. Should have taken better notes. Let's see. Is it down here? Where does he say it? Da, da, da. Okay. I'll find it as we. Oh, here we go. All right, got it. I found it. Okay. So when it says you here in the middle, this is the actual guy who was able to. Uh, this is the insider. Uh, just so everybody's aware. But yeah, and this I thought this is interesting because this is shows some awareness of just like the last video. There is them being law enforcement. There is some awareness of like tools that are used to collect on the bad guys, right? And but in their perception, those same tools obviously are going to be turned on them. Um, so I thought this was interesting. I would agree with that statement. And he's not using 4chan instead of Friends Chan. Wait, what? And he's not. I don't. Okay, well that's weird. But I think the other statement, quote, federal LEAs are responsible, is not exactly correct. One hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. Deep state operatives versus federal law enforcement. Keyhole spy satellites monitor critical infrastructure like the power grid and substations. We would have easily picked up and tracked down who those attackers are, unless the deep state operatives knew certain windows of opportunity when they attacked. That's not that perception is incorrect, right? That is really incorrect. Now, the only thing here that I would agree with to a certain extent is, are there vulnerabilities in our power systems across America, both to physical and digital attack? I would say absolutely, right? Um, every administration since I've been aware of all this, let's say in the past 20 to 25 years, right? They always say it's a priority, but uh, there hasn't been a real attempt in America to really protect everything, right? So I think that that should happen, right? They're also talking about to the left. Um, they're apparently and somewhere in here they talk about like an egg, basically an egg factory or an egg farm uh, was caught on fire, right? And there's been over 100 food processing plant fires in the past year, um, and they're basically saying that the federal government's too busy to investigate stuff like that, even though they say that food prices has tripled. Um, I'm if depends on why the fire happened. Is it electrical? Was it lightning? Right? I mean, there's a lot of reasons. I think they're thinking that the chance of it being random is zero, and I think that in many of these cases, unless it's eco-terrorist groups, because that has happened, obviously. There's many documented cases of that, especially with industrial farms on a like the butchers, cattle farms. I mean, they have certainly attacked those places, right? Burnt them to the ground. So, so okay, and they in the middle text too. I'm gonna read this from Bobby. He's the leader, as I mentioned. Anyways, y'all with those fancy computer skills can identify key potential prospective targets that these bastards would be interested in, like what regions, areas, etc., so we can get that info out by tomorrow's meeting. Out at tomorrow's meeting. I'm sure law enforcement is all over this, or at least I hope they are. But sadly, we can no longer trust that certain agencies will not be politically motivated in a certain way. I have to assume that these substations are very rural and easily vulnerable. Eh, you know, if what they're not considering in general is that power goes out for them too. I mean, sure, they have backup generators, but it's not an enduring solution, right? Like, so if there's big damage, like the government and law enforcement is also affected by that, and same with their families, right? So to think that, I mean, are there sociopaths or psychopaths in the government? Sure. There's got to be, statistically, there has to be a few. Are all of them in positions where they can, like, talk about um, windows of satellite coverage and burn food processing plants and cover it up and make sure it's not investigated. I really doubt it. Similar things have happened from a counter intel perspective. Like Robert Hanson's a great example. He was put in charge of finding himself. You know, so mistakes have been made, but do I think it's systemic in this regard? No, I don't. I Because that's insane, right? That's If you think about everything that they're claiming is a false flag and that it's actually in some way connected to a government, our government specifically, I think that somebody would have blown the whistle, right? There's no group of people in the world that are that close-lipped. So and then at the bottom, they think 4chan's a shithole. It is. Okay, let's see. All right, so I wasn't able to see much about this, but it's a statement from the Attorney General about what we talked about last time. Uh, there was a break-in. We talked about that. We find out later, um, at least in news. Well, how do I say this? News reporting indicates that there is a connection between the Utah Attorney General and some members of these groups. Now, is the Attorney General actually a member of the group? I doubt it. I haven't seen evidence of that. But there is some concern there, so they are sharing quite a bit of information about that. Let's see. Bohemian officials in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan have concerned FBS arrest by both Reuters, and I don't know who that is. I should probably know that, but oh, Sam Bankman-Fried. That's right. Um, and they're saying stuff like this. This is because of God, what's that billionaire pedophile? Shit, his name's drawing a blank now, but we do see this a lot. It's like quasi comedic. I'm gonna go ahead and say it ahead of time. Sam Bankman-Fried didn't kill himself. Kind of funny. Da, da, da. I thought this is interesting, but also quite kind of indirect. Yeah, so gas prices dropped again. This happens when there are signs of civil unrest and the New World Order backs off on their controlled demolition of the economy. The trend started back when someone blew up the Georgia Gridstones, which, if you're not familiar with that weird ass story, you could Google it. Gas was about 419 then. Since those power outages, the gas dropped to 369. Refractor if the power outages were done by citizens, not the deep state. Okay. Well, that's a weird perspective, dude. Weird perspective, Cyberdoc. Cyberdoc actually certainly knows some, he knows some things. That's for sure. Let's see. Hacked, like SQL vulnerability. Let's see. Okay. And he's basically saying here he's responding. This one actually didn't show up in the text, which was weird. So I just got the response. That's how it happens when you take screenshots of large amounts of data from your phone to also. So I was thinking so he's basically saying uh, SQL vulnerabilities are numerous. Having a MySQL database on our old OK server with a member list made it a high value target by hackers. This is why I say keep the database offline. That's pretty sound OPSEC and cyber advice, right? And he's true. There's maybe not thousands, but there's a lot of SQL vulnerabilities out there. And a vulnerability is basically if a vulnerability is unpatched, which means fixed, right? There's ways to fix those vulnerabilities. If they're not fixed, that is a attack vector for hackers or hacker groups to get into your systems. And then, Russia primes nuclear bomb 12 times more powerful than dropped on Hiroshima. A lot of this, that's Mac's department, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So, and the people putting this out is basically what he's saying down here is, the guy one of the guys who's spreading some of this crap has been banned from the local subreddits. not just for his lies, but he's also a spammer. He spammed his paid newsletter until everyone got sick of it, banned him. So they know they're getting some intel from bad sources. And which one's this? Okay, I forgot I had it on animation to fit more on a slide, but they want to sell Sam Bankman-Fried T-shirts. Sam Bankman-Fried didn't kill himself. That's pretty funny. I think the group that hacked the old OK server got the database and members list. I'm guessing one of the thousands of published SQL vulnerabilities got them in. The hackers distributed the info to journalists. The Iron County GOP chair was a member of one of the old Oath Keepers websites. SL Trib. There must be something tribute. I guess maybe a newspaper tried to shame him about that. All right, here it is. The SL Trib. Yeah. Okay. You know, not much exciting there. And here's some more. Okay, this is about them, right? The members of far right paramilitary. The term "current" in this post is relative, since I don't see a date on the story. Very, very unlikely now. And then he goes in and is basically saying the effect of this is still a plague of the organization's reputation, and they are treated as current by several publications with a desire to smear us. There's a journalist out of Florida who focused on Andy and trying to destroy his reputation. And most of the Salt Lake Tribune attack pieces are Brian Schote. He's a journalist out there in Salt Lake City, Utah. A real piece of shit who plays fast and loose with the truth in his attacks on us, voter canvassing groups, and anyone trying to expose voter fraud. They are lying, and the lying narrative out of Cox and Henderson's office. Associates of Schote out of SSU repeatedly tried to get information from me about our last armed march. And he was our security alert information. But basically, he goes on and on and on, yeah. They're not very happy with it. Some of their people they have people coming after them now talking about these specific connections or making assumptions of who they are. They're not very happy with it. Any negative publicity our enemies have about us is no newer than January 6th. So, and then at the bottom, he says they would be a really bored and underworked lot because we no longer tolerate the kind of chatter about arming up, kicking indoors, and all that crazy banter. That is really what sunk Stewart. Stewart is the guy with one eye we covered, right? And objectively, there is nothing illegal to find. And that is the bottom line, because somewhere across our country, there are likely a few infiltrators, almost impossible to guarantee otherwise. Well, he was looking into his own future. So let's see, what do we got here? More talk about hacking. Yeah, basically, okay. So his previous work with Microsoft-based servers require a lot more work to keep hackers out. Linux servers can be secured more effectively. I mean, that just depends on the specifics, right? But maybe a couple of years ago, I would have said absolutely, that sounds right. Or at least what I've been told. I'm not a server management guy. They talk about Linux, many people put a Linux server in and forget about it until something bad happens. Yeah, well, that's all servers. Okay. They run like Timex watches. People forget about them. On the other hand, Microsoft has always seemed to have all kinds of vulnerabilities built in. And I remember why I put this on. So Five Eyes. Five Eyes is the United States, Canada, England, New Zealand, and Australia. Those are our 5 closest allies militarily. So what they're saying is, leave these vulnerabilities in intentionally or specific vulnerabilities so that the government, law enforcement, intelligence agencies can see what's going on behind the scenes, right? In the U.S. publics, which I can assure you it doesn't work that way. Okay, so the next few a little interesting. They actually add somebody. Um, Basically, I don't understand this about their perception of deconfliction. It's like they're not actually doing anything really, but they feel this need to like talk to the other similar groups. Okay, so other AP3 means American Patriots, three percenters, and OK is Oath Keepers. They want to chat with each other, or at least add somebody from AP3 into their chat, which they do, um, to deconflict. So if they have anything to share, but I can kind of see um, just right off the bat, the AP3 guy is not in the same mindset of these guys. The guys who are under Bobby, let's say. He's a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more conspiratorial. Yeah, it's kind of odd, but um, like, and he's bringing up this thing to that end. I should have been aware that I attend a Zoom meeting for the Salt Lake City chapter of Democrat Socialist of America. I use an assumed name. I also have a third party asset who informs me of the time and place for their private meetings. The asset is an employee at the place they meet and not affiliated with them. Please don't approach any employee of a location which is in which DSA SLC meet. It could compromise my asset. I mean, that's interesting. Interesting, but so this shows a little bit of sophistication. I mean, obviously, it's good to know what your perceived enemies are doing and thinking and what they're talking about. What are their priorities? We've talked about this in some of my other videos. And back to the nuclear bombs, and then what is this? Oh yeah, so Telegram. The guy giving shit. So they're saying basically everybody knows that he's in some of these chats, and when he gets in, they just kind of shut up. He's sitting securely over it. Yeah, I can't actually remember. I'm just going to move on. Not much to see here anyway, right? Okay. This is more, this CyberDoc, obviously, he's got some awareness. In my server, I harden the kernel and recompile with ASLR, stack randomization, and other things that makes it 90+% of the script kitty buffer overflows worthless. Yeah, pretty smart. His experience is Microsoft servers require a lot more to keep hackers out. We already covered that. Yep. It's some of these are weird, right? So some of them it's like I get this much, 3 or 4 screenshots later, and then it's all kind of weird, or it's all over the place. Let's say. Odd take on Intel. I think this is one of the new guys. I can't remember. Yeah, he's talking about, he was outside. Sorry for the delay. This is the AP3 guy, right? So he worked Intel for many years along gangs and narcotics investigations, and always used the two interlocking, deconflicting sites in California to not overrun each other, which kind of weird. On one hand, to physically call both sides, give case numbers, case incident contact information, suspects' names, addresses, types of investigation, narcotics, gangs, intel, or miscellaneous. Their databases were in-house only, no internet connectivity. Don't know how many times I had a conflict, was given a phone number, called the case agent, and after talking, sharing info, made the case stronger. Well, obviously, local, state, county to county interaction with investigations is smart. That's good practice, right? Especially if you're actually trying to solve a crime. So, Uh, please, if there is anything I can do to help with potential problem concern, please let me know. Bobby, I know Steve is always busy. If you two need a Utah Oath Keepers point of contact for deconfliction, put me in coach. I would welcome working with other Patriot groups in their point of contact, so we don't step on toes. Which still is weird because if you're not doing any like operation, like why would you have to worry about stepping on toes if you're just really the bulk of their stuff is being aware, quasi aware, and chatting, right? Um, you know, they're doing things independently, but as a group, it seems minimal. So I don't know. It's kind of weird to me. And then, yes, sir, you got that right. Moving forward, I would like to mandate an SOP whereby any operation, regardless of size, scope, and our AO, is run through you and the rest of our associated admins. And then they agree. Um, and then he's saying basically one of the other people has a point of contact for intel matters for both AP3 Utah and AP3 National. They're back on the assumed name, like they're physically getting in. They're probably recording the Democratic Socialist of America meetings. Very good to be working together. Yes, it's good for the CIA to know what MI6 is doing at a point. How many Bond movies did he screw up the operation for the CIA guys, or vice versa? Which is, that's not how it works in real life, though. I mean, there's you know, joint environments, combined joint environments, like you know, Brits, Australians, New Zealanders, and Canadians. We're all in the same skiffs, right? I've been every deployment except for special ops. We had either a foreign intel officer who was like a similar position to one of us, typically operations though, right? An ops officer or an intel officer. Right? We had those guys um, in with us, and so we don't bomb our allies, right? Like it's pretty obvious. But I mean, in this case, it's just so weird. They kind of brought this up the last chats too. Does anybody know the whereabouts of Redacted? I think he is supposed to be on a house arrest still, but I haven't heard anything lately. He will likely be part of any trouble brewing, so keeping tabs on him is important. Not sure who they're talking about because I have it redacted, but that happened to me. The reasons I can't attend DSA meetings in person is I went to a meet and greet and there was a Proud Boy there. Interesting. Also undercover. We recognized each other and it was awkward. No one at DSA said anything, but I have to assume that they saw us recognize each other. I mean, that's decent awareness. It's like, really, dude, are you that bored in your retirement that you infiltrate socialist meetings? I mean, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I get it. But and then he's just explaining stuff. This isn't really super important. So the insiders actually does. I left some of these out intentionally. He is trying to get some of these same contacts because he's going to get into their groups and he's going to take these same screenshots, which he was successful at, which is why we have all this in the first place, right? This one they're asking, hey, can you make this guy an admin, please, in the chat? Cyberdocs is saying that he's not AP3 nor conducting any ops, but he's in southern Utah in Iron County, and I have no idea where Iron County is. I definitely not. And then he's talking about his fingers being cold again. His wedding ring can't come off because they're so cold. So, this is in response to the guy that they want to keep tabs on. They think's on house arrest. I think that as things change this next year, he will be showing his ugly mug again. I just want to be one step in front of where he is going to be. They go back now to the Sam Bankman-Fried didn't kill himself t-shirts, but this didn't show up. So either did this, as an unfortunate reality in one cartoon, And where is his nerdy girlfriend who headed up to Alameda? Headed up. Who headed up Alameda? Oh. No, they're talking about Freed. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. So now they go into, the extreme cold, things like that. How even though it's just literally a weather report, it has high propaganda value. Uh, so again, we know you worked Intel. So a lot of these guys, especially the new guys they bring into these chats, are trying to big dick each other, right? Literally, like, I'm fucking cooler than you because my car's blue. I'm like, whatever, dude, go fuck yourself. They talk about it, talk about it. All they do is talk about it. Blah 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 blah. I was Intel, and like their perception of Intel is not like Josh and I's and G2's uh, version of Intel. Like two very different things. They're talking about having Intel on like gang Intel, things like that. Da, da, da. So, and then they're saying, they might have to make some inquiries. They might not be able to get quick answers about what's going on with X, Y, and Z people. Um, but things might change. Copy that. I've got your info from our contact page. Please grab mine and call text anytime. Kind of being polite, working it out. Let's see here. All right. So we're missing some stuff. I'm assuming you know about the Wayback Machine. They're basically saying so. This was redacted by the insider. I redacted this other stuff. I'm just being extra careful because I don't want these videos deleted. Yeah, they're aware of it. Smart as a black spider, so it's all up there. So yeah, they're looking for something here, and they were apparently able to find it. State nationals. Okay. Land recording office members of services. I don't know why they're going here. It doesn't really explain it. Dude has okay. So now, and somewhere in here they mentioned trying to dock somebody. I'm assume it's the same guy from Salt Lake City, who's the journalist who's been basically going after him, trying to interview a few of them. Let's see. Okay, then we're moving to something else. Okay, so this first one, basically, they're kind of talking a little serious here, like passing orders, right? So right at the top, he's been invited to one of the protests today on the Salt Lake City under the guise of one of my cover IDs. And he's respectfully requesting that no Oath Keepers attend the local protest or counter protest for his safety. This is simply a request. If anybody disagrees, I'll happily coordinate with you so that you can attend or counter while keeping my contact intact. I will share pertinent intel I gather. And then one guy saying, stay safe. So basically, then this is their deconfliction. Like, yeah, okay, we're cleared. We're not planning to attend such events. Be safe. Give us a good debrief. It'll probably take a while to get usable intel. Sometimes these things produce nothing at all. Well, that's the nature of intelligence. If I get any intel that directly concerns OKS, I'll share it immediately. Obviously, if I see plans of violence, I'll report them to law enforcement. Other than those two things, any intel will take a while to process, which is weird. What are you going to process, dude? I'm very, very careful when it comes to what intel I release. That makes the process slower but more accurate. Please be patient and give me time to work through everything to produce accurate intelligence. All right, cool, whatever. Da, da, da. And then the guy's responding today. Get it? Totally get it. It used to be a world I lived in. I miss it. Be safe. Blah blah blah. Sorry, looked that weird. And then this just some weird banter, right? Basically they're sharing some police frequencies. Again, another fire, huge fire at this is the egg poultry factory. Uh, it's they're saying it facetiously, like it's just a coincidence. And then what is this? Something with Camp Pendleton. I didn't look this up. Probably some type of fire because that Camp Pendleton's always on fire. Now this down here, this is what I put this up here. I thought this was interesting. They're kind of talking about some conspiracy theory stuff at the top. Risk of a gasoline shortage, bans on fuel, blah blah blah. It just keeps going. Stuff that really hasn't happened. When it gets down here, and then the German consulate in Istanbul is closed for security reasons, citing the threat of terrorist attack, and they talk about this shit quite a bit, right? But then redacted guy shares this TLP Amber report, right? My FBI guy sent me this document. They have increased the cyber alert to Amber. So, like, I don't know. My time at the FBI was very different than being like a special agent or anything like that, right? But it is weird that he's saying he got it from an FBI guy. If so, who is that FBI guy, right? Because it doesn't seem like, okay, sharing, like if it is just and obviously I couldn't open this. These are screenshots, right? But and I haven't done any further research either. I don't really want to, but I don't think there's an issue sharing an Amber report. But if he's sharing an Amber report, is that guy also sharing other things? Like, if the Oath Keepers or another group, let's say the FBI guy is sympathetic by personal or familial ties, right? And you go to them and say, "Hey, listen, if my name pops up, would you give me a heads up?" Like that's I'm pretty sure that would be illegal. I mean, certainly unethical. But. Okay, the AP3 boys join the fight. So this is another AP3 guy who, boom, pops right in the chat. Hi, everyone. I'm the Intel and Training Officer for Utah, American Patriots 3%ers. I'm glad to be able to work together with other Patriots. Look forward to teaching and learning from you. And then basically just saying hello, welcome, looking forward to the training. And then let's see. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. Basically, 29 sheriffs across Utah are petitioning the state legislature. The goal of those, I did a little bit of research into this, just some news articles, but basically, what the sheriffs were trying to do in this petition directly aligns with the Oath Keepers goals. They want to include the sheriff as a constitutional office under the Utah Constitution, things like that. So, I mean, some of these actions directly align with Oath Keepers and other 3%ers goals. Okay, now they're just, January 6th stuff, right? January 6th committee referred charges against Trump to the DOJ. They're just talking about, yeah, it's what we expected. Yeah, it's politically and historically important, but the legal weight has not yet been determined. And yeah, and this quasi happened. He was kind of smart about this. That yeah, they're going to wait until he runs again, and then really hit home on the charges. So I mean, he was going down the right path here. I mean, it's still too conspiratorial for my liking, but he was on the right track there. Okay, and so then they're responding to this stuff because they, like I said, this chat is all over the place, right? And so they're basically talking about it. So, and Scalia called the fourth branch of government. They have seemed to have fallen off common use. Okay, well, they're talking about the sheriffs and their petition and actions. This is more talk of law enforcement interactions. So, Oath Keepers are basically saying when shit hits the fan, we're on your side. Um, Yesterday, I had a chat with Blank County Sheriff Deputy. Uh, I was fixing his X, Y, and Z. I haven't seen that full chat. And then they're responding, yeah, he's a friend. He has been to several barbecues, and I'm assuming that's basically the Oath Keeper members. They have friends over for a barbecue. So the sheriff has attended. It doesn't seem like he attended in his official capacity, like as a plainclothes friend, which is interesting. So that's one area where the news got it right. But if you're a group comprised of veterans and like law enforcement veterans, mostly, like at least the oath keepers, right? Of course, you're going to know the sheriff. Like you have people who worked on that department; they probably likely work together. Of course, they're going to be friends. I mean, I don't. The news is making that out to be like, see, this is tyranny at its finest, but it's like, well, they're all cops. Of course, they know each other. Okay, let's move on. Something about surveillance does. Yeah, like I don't know if you've seen Stone Vet's videos. It's like, oh gosh, surveillance does. I hate those. But yeah, so this is kind of interesting. This in Provo. I don't know if you're familiar with Provo, but I gave a talk in Provo actually. God, I guess 2 years ago now at uh, Hack Saint Con, or no, it's just called Saint Con. Sorry, it's in Provo. Wonderful, beautiful city, right? Um, and there's some historical significance with the Mormon church there too. But basically, you're talking about this drone defense company out of there, and he supposes providing his products to surveil his own constituents would be a slight conflict of interest. Traffic and street. He's talking. Then he goes into he's talking about street lights, cameras only work if you live in the city. So there's vulnerabilities with that's basically he's talking about a vulnerability, right? Within the last month, I had 3 drones surveilling my property closely enough that from indoors I was alerted by the rotor noise. Source unknown. Grew up a pheasant hunter. I'd be interested to clean and dress that bitch out. So he's talking about shooting one of the drones down, taking it apart, seeing what is it, seeing what's making it tick, basically, because he doesn't know the origin. Which in some states that is legal. If you're in an area where you can already shoot or your property's large enough, like here here in Loudoun County, it's I think 12 or 13 acres. If you have a property that big, you can actually shoot firearms on it. There's other rules, obviously, but a lot of these guys are pretty rural. So yeah, I mean, if you grew up pheasant hunting, you're a pretty good shot at something about the same size as a drone. They're back to talking about the ammo. Well, this is mentioned in some things that I had to omit. Um, you know, I I didn't want this video to get taken down. But those sections didn't say anything that's like pertinent to the podcast, right? It's just kind of a bunch of bullshit and a lot to redact. But yeah, so w- I asked this same question, like 11 million rounds, like for the VA, like what's that for? Um, and I still don't have a good answer to that. Um, I imagine it could be innocuous, right? Like this agency didn't have the extra resources to buy the ammo to do training. So they asked the VA for basically a loan, like, hey, can you purchase this on our behalf? I mean, that stuff like that, I think happens. I mean, I assume it does. Somebody like circular funding, let's call it. Uh, and then basically they're talking about the ammo. They're talking about the ammo. That's just up until 2019. No telling what's happened since then. And they're sharing a document militarization data. 11 million rounds for what? Blah blah blah. Bet if we did an audit of the VA, we wouldn't find them. Yeah, wouldn't. Yeah, well, uh, What was Biden's number of weapons he gave to ISIS in August 2021? 85 billion? Yeah. Uh, People used to scream about a $10,000 hammers and $100,000 toilet seats. That's how they fund programs like the old 117. I mean, there is some truth to that, but okay, so like the hammers, $10,000 hammers, like if like let's say that hammer has to go into a kit and has to be in an airplane, can that hammer is it resilient to high heat, um, high chill factors, et cetera? I mean, there's a lot of things from an engineering perspective that these guys aren't thinking about. 10,000 is a lot for a hammer, right? But there are applications where some of these, what seem to be common tools, are actually very custom proprietary tools, and they have to do a lot of things and they have to do it perfect every time. So that's something I learned over the years. And so, just sharing it with you, there's more to it than it being it's not a ball peen hammer most of the time when you would see stuff like that. They also, typically they're not just buying one. Just something to think about. But let's see. Yep. And so this was kind of odd, but if you're not the 117 Alpha is stealth bomber. Um, this guy has knowledge, and a lot of stuff goes on in the Nevada desert. Um, obviously everybody's aware of Area 51 and blah blah blah, and but it's also been a training test flight range for many decades, many decades. So he's basically talking about how there's a lot of sites out there, um, and that most of the security is DoD and contract security, not your apartment security, like legit dudes, and they have sensors. And that's pretty good awareness. That's true. Um, I knew a guy for what's called GSP, ground sensor platoon. He did a thing in Nevada some years ago to update basically ground sensors, so they can tell if somebody's trying to tunnel into the base, if somebody's walking where they're not supposed to be, etc. And a lot of that's people think it's because the government's trying to hide something. It's like, no, man, like a lot of these things have unexploded ordnance all over the place because they were test firing ranges, right? And they don't want somebody to either find ammunition that's intact so they can basically reutilize it for a terrorist attack or something like that, but also hikers just walking along and losing a foot, right? Like there's more reasons than just secrecy, right? Okay. Let's see. Local awareness, law enforcement stuff. All right. Staff were fired. So, you know, there's a lot of posts like this. I mean, locals, if I was in charge of this group, I would only maybe 10% of my time would be looking strategically. These would be the type of things that I would be more interested in knowing. It's like, hey, does anybody have a kid at this school? That would be one of the first things I asked. Then it goes off the rails, right? Staff member gets student pregnant. Then he goes into, you know, this is how gangs recruit with sexual exploitation. Just like they beat in dudes into the gang, they have a similar process, which is let's say different for the women, um, and they talk about that. They also, they make women do things for the gang to make money: drug mules, prostitutes. What is this? I don't know what he's trying to say here. Here we go. Being on the hook. This type of okay. Yeah, he's talking about how do they blackmail officers? How do they blackmail this? They put people in compromising positions and then show them that evidence. So, and this one, he's saying one of the insiders was actually a corrections officer. She had a move, and yes, his team coordinated that move so that she would be safe. Yep, he talks about that right up here. They're just kind of talking about some experiences with gangs. New members required to kill a rival gang member just to join the gang. I don't think that's blanket across the board, but cool, you know. Females, yeah, like I was saying, you know, their entry into a gang is different. It's not just getting beat up. That's for sure. Yeah. Okay. Blank. We also have what was called Going Hermit. Member doesn't get jumped out. Oh, okay. Yeah, they're talking about their experience with the gang somewhere. You know, when you get old, you get out of the gang, I guess. You know, but basically more storytelling. Another new member appears, shares his info. You know, and here's where okay. So I try to get funny after here, and I'm going to go quicker through these next slides because it's basically all news related stuff, and it's all over the damn place. So earthquakes and Al Qaeda, right? And this is in the same, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 chats. You know, right now they're in earthquakes and Al Qaeda. Right. So making everybody aware, hey, there's this earthquake. Um, and so they're posting about that. And then, you know, national ground stop on all aircraft destined to any airport in Florida. They're saying, well, we heard it's Al Qaeda. I was like, okay, great, guys. Yeah, so it's weird, but I don't think in this case it was Al Qaeda at all. Okay. So, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Hypersonic earth mosquitoes. So, um, yeah, I mean, this is when they literally have all of them have strokes and they go off the deep end on everything, right? So it's just sharing all this kind of bullshit, like total bullshit. So, basically, the um, China has infected mosquitoes with a vaccine. So when they bite you, you get the vaccine, or something worse like Danube. Uh, uh, Putin deploys the hypersonic missile, and then earthquakes, all in the same, little time span here, right? Now, in this one, Al Qaeda Catholics plane attacks, right? So pretty fun. So the Pope, apparently, the Pope's is in bad health, and so Al Qaeda plans plane attack using new techniques. And then the next one is retired Italian general says basically an American official bragged about removing the Pope from something. I don't know what's going on there. U.S. interference inside the Catholic Church. And then what do we have over here? Yeah, more plane attacks and just kind of crap, right? Just it's I think in one of these they actually talk about how it's kind of like these headlines are very onion-ish, you know. So some people are like, what the hell's going on here? Like, why are you posting all this crazy shit? So in this one, the Pope police fixed Taiwan missile in China. So in this article, which is BBC, uh, Chinese military devices were sent to China for repair. Okay. Yeah. Noel, if that's true, definitely, wasn't, that wasn't smart. Right. Um, so is there any truth to that? No idea. Don't even care. Uh, and then it's this assumption that the Pope's being forced to resign. This being a couple years ago, we know that that didn't actually happen, you know. And then Albuquerque police, uh, they're investigating some incidents at the homes and offices of locally elected leaders. So, this one's great. This one is Bigfoot flying Chinese jet nearly collides with U.S. fighter, causing kids to miss Halloween. So, uh, Yeah, man faces terror charges for the power outage. And then down here, if anybody sees Bigfoot stories, basically let them know. Uh, this is about the systems being repaired in China again. Chinese jet came within 10 feet of U.S. military aircraft. That's probably true. I mean, we do that to them. They do that to us. I don't know if it's common, but I know it happens for sure. And it's super irresponsible for all the parties involved. But confrontation between Biden and Jinping likely over Taiwan. Yeah. I, you know, these are news articles that are to uh, meant to stir up emotions, right? It doesn't mean they're true, right? It's a opinion of what's going on. But then there are predictions for the pandemic. What is this? Avoid Halloween parties like the bubonic plague. Basically, then they go on to talk about how it's like COVID based and other diseases, etc. Or like, and one of these, I believe they say they're going to put vaccines in the candy. But okay, in this one, Bigfoot loses Brazilian election. So anybody who's seen Bigfoot stories in the news, let me know. It's a hunch. He's looking for a pattern. It's going really crazy, starting to go really, really crazy. Um, let's see. Similar method used to predict major events caused a lot of deaths in February. They're talking about it's a COVID conspiracy, basically. There are a lot of reports that Bolsonaro supporters have gained entry into the Brazilian Congress. I forgot who Lula is, but this is new hot information. Could be total bullshit though, as we have seen before. Yeah, well, at least he's smart enough to recognize that. Here's the confirmation. Yeah, I mean it's not really confirmation, right? He's seen it. That's Intel Slava V is a Ukrainian site on Telegram, which I mean probably a better source for Ukrainian news and the war effort than it is for South America. So, still talking about Brazil. Did you see what Gates said? He ran out of things he asked for, so he ended up in the battle. What? Nice write up on Gateway Pundit. Uh, let's see. McCarthy when he was the Speaker of the House, so they're talking about him doing something. Speaker of the House, blah blah blah. He's also conceded that if one vote for removal, such as SPOH, he would vacate. That's weird. Okay. And then this is the former president, Bolsonaro, is in Florida as protesters take to the streets, etc. Only safe place for communists now. Blah blah blah. Lula is another WEF plant, I would guess. It's weird. Totally weird. I sense a lot of fear from the news media this morning as they reviewed last week's election process for the speaker. Okay, cool. Yeah, like I mentioned astrology before. So astrology predicts Rob Lowe wins his fight against Bigfoot. you know. Yeah, so they're expecting something to be a false flag incident 72 hours from when they're writing this. This whoever that redacted guy thinks there's worse thing to come. And then CyberDoc starts talking about astrology. I thought the one model from a person I follow based on ancient form of astrology predicts deaths of a significant person or significant number of people. And then it's like, okay, that's weird. You didn't seem like I wasn't expecting that from you, pal. Like let's get you back into the norm, he's talking about different indicators of that. He's basically saying, the Nagasaki bombing was predicted before. Yeah, and then this article about apparently Rob Lowe had a near-death experience with Bigfoot. So, yeah. And then CyberDoc goes, full. He just digs into it, man. He goes deep. Okay, so he's basically talking about like, so if you look at Jupiter, Saturn trigons, these happen every 20 years, and blah 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 blah, and he goes into it and into it and into it and into it, and then he goes back to the Georgia Guidestones where blah blah blah. Everything's this is this is in my opinion just crazy bullshit, right? I don't believe any of it, and I doubt I ever will. Okay, this one, Bolsonaro murdered by Marxist vaccine. So the Marxists in America want him sent back so he can be murdered. And this is just, medicine has outgrown a lot of the plagues from the past. So they want to invent new ones. Okay, whatever. That's crazy. What is this one? Let's see. God created a good immune system for us. We have no idea how deadly the next global this pandemic will be. History shows the native tribes in America were decimated by smallpox. Okay. Yeah, well, they had no immunity because they were never exposed to it. The Europeans didn't have a same thing. A lot of them died. A lot of them died from smallpox. Oh, so keeps getting crazier, right? So fuck. Hillary changes voice with AI and causes earthquake after killing Bolsonaro with Marxist vaccine. So basically, this one, they're not saying anything. It's just crap after crap after crap. Um, you know, IRS dirty bomb causes FFA computer glitch, and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it looks 5 or 6. They cover 3 topics. Just they're throwing it out there, right? It's all it's all crazy. Yeah, and there's always a dirty bomb fear. It's like, I think it's a more likely scenario that they detect the radiation before, and they go to the place, and there's a bunch of dead people from radiation poisoning. And that would be my thought. I don't know how many white nationalists have like radiological NBC gear. So, more banter, right? So the FFA lifts restrictions because WEF attendees conduct cyber attack. Again, all over the place. They're just throwing it out there. I don't know why they're concerned with these 52 tankers in the air. Doesn't seem like a lot, really. Big picture. The FFA, it was a cyber attack. It wasn't that. They're lying to us. It's like, well, how do you know? I could have been a mixture of things, right? I mean, who really actually knows? So, from the news at least. Rumble contact saves woman from Gavin Newsom open border. uh, yeah. So this one's kind of weird. Somebody in the group knows somebody who's on Rumble who's been sharing some stories, and um, they rescued some woman from sex slavery during a chase with police. Weird. Yeah, I was trying to figure out myself. This is all I know. To me, it sounded like she was there calling it out and found out that there was something involved in the operation. My contact blank is who has that Rumble channel. Okay, I will be talking to this gentleman soon, and we'll be trying to get him to send people to us for recruitment and proper vetting. Okay, so weird, but okay. And then, obviously they hate the previous border policies. Sit rep time. Earthquake kills Putin before his birthday. So literally in the same amount of short period of time, we got another earthquake, small one. Yeah. Flights grounded, and Putin will be killed this year before his birthday. LifeLock prevents tank shipments to Brazil, causes Kroger to empty shelves. So nothing to see here. It's all bullshit. You know, it's all bullshit. Like if you take a look at that guy, I mean, I'm going to look into this guy later. I mean, I don't, doesn't look like an American beret to me, but, could be a stolen valor case right there. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll play that one by ear. Again, well, the only thing in here is like somebody, Cyberdoc's like, even Cyberdoc's putting out crazy shit. Like he's saying, wait, that's not a Babylon B headline. So, weird, but Cyberdoc gets a check for $25 for the T-Mobile brief. I've had T-Mobile for a while and I've never gotten a check, but they've been breached like 6 times in 2 years. So, and then, then they're talking about I use LastPass, blah, blah, blah. Tucker Carlson scrambles Russian jets, shuts off Canadian flight system, but expands EKG requirements for pilots during solar flares. So, hey, this may not be funny to anybody else but me, but I think it's pretty hilarious. Okay. Yeah. So they're talking about, okay. So like Russian, okay. So Russian jets getting scrambled anywhere other than America doesn't strategically affect the Oath Keepers, Um, yeah. So the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, having them in and around the nuclear facilities in Ukraine, that's actually a pretty good idea. Um, they have the equipment to detect leaks and everything else. Yeah, and so now, obviously they're pretty anti-vaxxer all around. I don't really have an opinion about it that I'm going to say publicly, but they're making the FFA did at some point up the requirements for pilots of a certain age who had the vaccine. Apparently, it's kind of hard to verify, but they and then literally the next one, Canada's flight system and that went down, and so did the flight system in the Philippines. And then Jeremy down at the bottom is mentioning nobody's mentioning the X-class solar flare that happened around the same time either. Yeah, so pretty odd duck. Okay, so Tucker suggests Bitcoin is solution to Soros and right-wing extremists at Davos. All of a sudden, they go on they're talking about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and somehow Bitcoin surged right at the right time, right? Probably because FTX and other, probably 5 or 6 other places were really kind of screwing the balance sheets. But yeah, Tucker suggests some hacker put ransoms on those systems. That's possible, but whole point of doing a ransom is telling people you did the ransom so you can get the money. They obviously don't like Soros. A lot of people don't like Soros, and they obviously don't like the World Economic Forum. Um, you know, it's one of those things where a lot of people on both sides are kind of like, okay, that's some of the things that people say at these encounters, like Davos, like the WEF meeting, the World Economic Forum leadership meeting at Davos, are everybody's kind of like, that's an odd thing to say. It's like, do you really believe that? Are you paid to say this? Like, what the hell's going on here? Oops, let's go back. Okay. Davos elites crash helo into North Carolina substation. So more about Davos, helicopter crashes, and another North Carolina power station damage. Atlanta Antifa prepares for cable management causing airport outage. So CyberDoc is posting some of the pictures of his network. That's the only thing that was really kind of interesting. Everything else here is kind of it's conjecture, it's bullshit, it's rumors. I I'd be willing to bet that 90% of it's not accurate. Russian spy ship uses coaxial cable to cause earthquake off Hawaiian coast. So, not much to talk about. Hey, you know, Russia has spy ships. Yeah, they're in the ocean, right? And they go around and collect things against countries that are not allies. Um, Such a shocker, right? It's unbelievable, right? Um, yeah, nothing else to see here. And there's Hawaii, by my understanding, is very uh, prone to earthquakes. So. And Atlanta riots stopped by German Leopard tank and hypersonic bomber. So again, I don't. None of this seems to have any. Well, then, like he says here, I have X looking for anything heating up here, but right now everything's quiet. So yeah, sure. Could Salt Lake City have a protest over a police engagement that ends up in the shooting of a suspect? Yeah. Um, Salt Lake's not really a place where that happens much anyway. So, but yeah, the rest of it's just news articles. The Oath Keepers don't have to worry about the leopard tank. Bigfoot Bigfoot conducts joint military exercise with U.S. and Israel. Uh, Not uncommon for Israel and the U.S. to do joint operations, so there's really nothing to see here. Yeah, and and then again, Bigfoot. If anybody, if anybody sees any Bigfoot stories in the news, let me know. Right? Again, like, yeah, nothing, nothing that really seems to have anything to do with America either. Russian Proud Boy Bigfoots find classified document in Mike Pence home. Obviously, all true. I mean, would I lie to you? Yeah. Yeah. So they don't really like the Proud Boys, but they're looking for some context. Uh, Everybody who is in the executive branch has classified documents in their home. I don't. I would doubt there's a single one who doesn't. Right. Um, by my understanding, they can do that, like the president, vice president, and if several other tiers. Right. If they want to work from home, that's their with classified stuff. They can do that, and a lot of it's um, I don't know. My understanding is that's common practice. Now, is it secure? Would you want something like that in a home? No, absolutely not. And is it illegal for the average Joe? Absolutely. And more Bigfoot. There we go. And then more Bigfoot. And here's the last slide. Okay. So what do we got here? I like I've said before, let's just say just the Utah Oath Keepers, the ones who are ran by the David Coates guy and the other dude. They are not big fans of the Proud Boys at all. Like they don't really want to be associated with them. Um, they don't want to interfere, be involved, but they want to have some communication with them. Okay, so cool. Yeah. Uh, he does, and what he's saying is he has a connection in the South, but North and South often operate independent of each other. Yeah. Let's see. I'm not sure what that it's in reference to. I'd have to look it up. If you're having trouble with the paywall, you can disable JavaScript and then read the story without. Okay, well, oh, the Tribune. Probably it's the Tribune of something. No, but yeah, yeah. So that's it for this one. What do I have coming up next? So, got some intel analysis I'm working on. It's actually much more than this. So I just CrowdStrike got hacked, and they released this. The hackers, believe the group is called Clob or Clop. They released that list, and that list is out there now. So I took that and I pretty hastily visualized it. I'm not going to zoom in because it has people's names, phone numbers, um, details about their position, right? But just the visual representation is pretty interesting itself. It's kind of cool. Um, I'm also doing the Shanghai CCP party. So in multiple dumps, and this one's really, really big, right? Like, so Shanghai is not a small place. Like a lot of people live there. Some older lists that I had, and then I'm combining those with some newer list of the party members of that area of China. And it's pretty interesting. There's certainly some misconceptions about Chinese and their ability to like police their own people. The government typically wins those fights, um, but those fights obviously take place. So they're not aware early. So even though there's a ton of CCP members, like it's weird, but we'll get into that. Okay. And let me move my pretty face. Um, you know, one of the guys in our group is hard of hearing and he has cochlear implants named Scotto. Great, seemed like an awesome dude. And he's funny. She's made comments like, why doesn't she take the money she promised this person, like all bull stuff, and like get him speech therapy lessons? It's like, wow, you went there. Like you really went there. And so just like in the first one, it's like, hey, well, if you say these things on the internet, like, we're going to call you out. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So at that, listen, I appreciate everybody for coming. Let me see. I think I got one more. Yeah. So my socials, right? If you have any suggestions or like to talk about anything specifically, by all means, please. Yeah, any donations would be very appreciated. And hey, tune in for the next time. But listen, thanks for tuning in. Um, if you need anything, hey, by all means, of course, hit me up. Um, uh, and at that, everybody, have a good day.